Squire Hawkins sat upon the pyramid of large blocks called the stile in front of his house, contemplating the morning. The locality was Obedstown, East Tennessee. You would not know that Obedstown stood on the top of a mountain, for there was nothing about the landscape to indicate it. But it did. A mountain that stretched abroad over whole counties and rose very gradually. The district was called the Knobs of East Tennessee, and had a reputation like Nazareth as far as turning out any good thing was concerned. The squire's house was a double log cabin in a state of decay. 2 or 3 gaunt hounds lay asleep about the threshold, and lifted their heads sadly whenever Mrs. Hawkins or the children stepped in and out over their bodies. Rubbish was scattered about the grassless yard. A bench stood near the door with a tin wash basin on it, and a pail of water and a gourd. A cat had begun to drink from the pail, but the exertion was overtaxing her energies, and she had stopped to rest. There was an ash hopper by the fence, and an iron pot for soft soap boiling near it. This dwelling constituted 1/15 of Obedstown. The other 14 houses were scattered about among the tall pine trees and among the cornfields in such a way that a man might stand in the midst of the city and not know but that he was in the country, if he only depended on his eyes for information. Squire Hawkins got his title from being postmaster of Obedstown. Not that the title properly belonged to the office, but because in those regions the chief citizens always must have titles of some sort, and so the usual courtesy had been extended to Hawkins. The mail was monthly, and sometimes amounted to as much as 3 or 4 letters at a single delivery. Even a rush like this did not fill up the postmaster's whole month, though, and therefore he kept store in the intervals. The squire was contemplating the morning. It was balmy and tranquil. The vagrant breezes were laden with the odor of flowers. The murmur of bees was in the air. There was everywhere that suggestion of repose that summer woodlands bring to the senses, and the vague, pleasurable melancholy that such a time and such surroundings inspire. Presently, the United States mail arrived on horseback. There was but one letter, and it was for the postmaster. The long-legged youth who carried the mail tarried an hour to talk, for there was no hurry. And in a little while the male population of the village had assembled to help. As a general thing, they were dressed in homespun jeans, blue or yellow. Here were no other varieties of it. All wore one suspender, and sometimes 2, yarn ones knitted at home. Some wore vests, but few wore coats. Such coats and vests as did appear, however, were rather picturesque than otherwise, for they were made of tolerably fanciful patterns of calico, a fashion which prevails there to this day among those of the community who have tastes above the common level and are able to afford style.